I thought coming home a day early would be simple, quiet, low-key, no need for anyone to notice. Just me slipping back into the comfort of my own house and the arms of the woman I called my wife. But life doesn't always wait for the right moment to drop the truth on you. Sometimes it just rips the curtain open before you're ready. What I saw when I stepped through that front door didn't just close a chapter. It tore the whole damn book apart. And funny enough, it all began with silence. A silence that showed itself in the smallest ways, like a house key that suddenly didn't want to turn. Earlier that afternoon, the nurse had smiled as she handed me my discharge papers, though the smile didn't quite make it to her eyes. "You're all set, Mr. Finch." The doctor signed off early. "Looks like you're ahead of schedule," she said. I gave her a small nod, even though the dull ache in my chest reminded me I wasn't anywhere close to whole. 3 nights in a hospital bed after heart surgery will do strange things to a man. Machines humming, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, time dragging so slow you feel every second. Not once did Celia, my wife, show up to see me. Not one visit. Just a single text saying hospitals made her nervous. She claimed the smell of disinfectant turned her stomach. But that wasn't what cut deep. What hurt was the emptiness, the long, silent hours where love was supposed to show up and never did. I told myself not to make too much of it. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe she just didn't know how to handle sickness. Still, somewhere underneath the stitches and gauze, something inside me had already started to pull away. The cab ride home was hushed. The city rolled by in streaks of color, while my thoughts dragged heavy, like they were walking through mud. I thought about how the morning sun lit up the kitchen floor, about the trace of her perfume on the throw pillows, about the comfort of our bed. I even wondered if she'd be surprised to see me early, if maybe she'd smile, or maybe even cry. That little daydream shattered the second the cab pulled into our driveway. Celia's car was already there, but parked crooked, half across the bricks, like she'd flown in and never looked back. That wasn't her style. She was all about neatness, appearances, control. I stared at that car longer than I should have, feeling a weight pressing down on my chest. Part scar tissue, part something else entirely. I paid the fare, stepped out with my bag, and walked toward the front door. The house was dark downstairs. No lights, no dinner smells, no music drifting from the speakers, just a dim glow bleeding from upstairs. I didn't call out, didn't announce I was home. Something told me not to. Something deeper than just suspicion. The stairs groaned louder than usual under my feet. I stopped outside the bedroom door, cracked just enough to let a strange, warm light spill through. I pushed it gently, almost praying I'd find nothing. But there she was. Celia, my wife, wrapped up in the sheets with a man I'd never seen before. They were tangled together on the bed we bought 5 years ago, the same bed she once swore was too firm, the one we picked after testing half the showroom. Her laugh, light and breathless, cut through me like a blade. The sheets hung halfway down their bodies. My pillow lay tossed on the floor. On the nightstand, our wedding photo leaned at an odd angle, like it was forced to watch in silence. I didn't shout, didn't even flinch. I just stood there, breathing shallow, eyes locked, the world drained of every sound. The pain didn't come in an explosion. It opened hollow and wide, a cavern echoing inside me. They didn't notice me. Not yet. They were too lost in each other. Too sure I wouldn't walk through that door. 10 seconds, maybe more, ticked by in slow motion. Then I stepped back, quiet as a ghost. No yelling, no drama. Just a retreat. I went back down the stairs the same way I once walked through minefields overseas. Careful, steady, invisible. The cab was still waiting, engine running. The driver glanced at me as I slid inside. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Downtown," I muttered, voice low, barely more than a whisper. As the car rolled away from the house that no longer felt like mine, I didn't turn back. I closed my eyes and let the silence close in. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of betrayal. The kind that slices deep and leaves you empty. This wasn't grief. Not yet. This was that breathless moment before the storm, when everything is too still, too quiet. The city blurred past the window, but my mind had never been sharper. The ache from my surgery was nothing compared to the fire taking shape inside me now. Not anger, not rage, just a steady, pulsing clarity. Seeing Celia like that flipped a switch inside me. The woman in that bed wasn't the same one I had married. She wasn't worth another ounce of heartbreak. But that didn't mean she'd walk away without consequence. Downtown, I told the driver again, firmer this time. 20 minutes later, we stopped in front of a modest brick building wedged between two towers. I stepped out slow, overnight bag still on my shoulder, hospital bracelet barely cut from my wrist. I didn't fix my hoodie, didn't care about the dark circles under my eyes. None of that mattered. Not anymore. Liam Reed's office. My old friend, my attorney, a man who owed me more than a few favors. We'd known each other back when I was fixing computers after leaving the service. He'd since turned into one of the sharpest lawyers in the city. I walked in without warning. Liam looked up from his desk, surprised. Adrian, you're supposed to still be in the hospital. I shut the door behind me. Plans changed. He gestured to the chair across from him. What happened? I sat down slowly, pulled a thick folder from my bag, and set it on his desk like it was live ammunition. She's been cheating, I said flat, steady. I caught them in our bed today. Liam blinked, eyebrows tight. Some professor, I added. Didn't catch his name. Didn't need to. My voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that puts men on edge. I tapped the folder once. Everything you need is in there. He opened it carefully, flipping through page after page. Bank statements, property deeds, trust documents, power of attorney forms, private account records. A whole paper trail laid out in black and white. You already moved everything, Liam said, eyes flicking up from the file. That was months ago. I gave a single nod. The house, the business, the savings, they'd all been shifted, consolidated, locked tight. She still believed she had her hands on all of it. Liam leaned back in his chair and blew out a breath through his nose. She has no idea you've been preparing for this. She never paid attention, I said, my voice flat. And now, she's about to learn the lesson she never bothered to study. He kept flipping pages, and I could see his curiosity turning into something that looked a lot like respect. You moved the company into a trust last year. Made yourself the sole beneficiary. She never even updated her power of attorney after the wedding. No, I said, eyes hard as steel. I made sure she thought she didn't need to. She wanted the illusion of control, so I handed it to her gift-wrapped. And now? Liam asked. Now, I said evenly. I want papers filed today. Divorce, full documentation. Let her get served before she even figures out the accounts are frozen. You want restraining orders too? Yes. And flag the joint account. She's been siphoning money, including part of my VA disability. That alone qualifies for a federal review. Liam muttered, Jesus, you're going scorched earth. I rose to my feet, shaking my head. No, I'm not destroying anything. I'm protecting what's mine. I paused, met his eyes square on. She made her decision. I'm just making sure she lives with it. Liam reached for his phone. Give me 2 hours. I nodded. I'll be back. Keep it locked down. No leaks. Without another word, I left his office. The sun hit my face as I stepped outside, not like a man limping home from surgery, but like someone walking away from a battlefield, upright and clear-eyed. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was the first calculated move on a chessboard Celia never even realized she was playing on. By the time the sun dipped behind the city skyline, the house I once called home was already shifting. No longer a place of warmth and memories, but a fortress she didn't belong to anymore. The locksmith showed up within hours. I didn't waste a second. Every lock came out. Every keyhole turned new. The garage opener? Reprogrammed. The home security system? Reset from scratch. That passcode she insisted on, her birthday of course, wiped out completely. I even called the alarm company myself, had her flagged as unauthorized. From now on, no alerts, no warnings. Just silence. Precision. Step by step. I moved through the house methodically, collecting every spare key, pulling her duplicates, resetting the codes on hidden lockboxes. It wasn't a fit of rage. It was a transition, calm, cold, deliberate, the kind of shift she'd never see coming. Then came the money. 10 minutes after my request, the joint checking account was frozen. I took the last $23,000 and transferred it into a private account Celia didn't even know existed. I'd opened it months back under a separate trust, funneling in dividend payouts and side income little by little. The banker, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, barely raised an eyebrow when I explained why. She's been running the card like it's bottomless, I told her, calm as stone. She hasn't checked the balance today. But she will. The banker nodded, printed out the confirmation, and handed it to me quietly. "You're not the first," she said, voice soft. "But you might be the most prepared." "Not prepared," I replied. "Just done pretending." After that, I made another call to the luxury dealership where Celia's prized SUV was leased. She always bragged it was hers, parading the leather seats and backup cameras like she paid for them. But I knew better. My name was on the papers, and I'd made sure there was a buyback clause tucked neatly into the contract. One signature, one scan of my ID, and the dealership scheduled a team to take it back the same afternoon. No warning, no argument, just gone. By early evening, I was sitting across the street in the passenger seat of Liam's black SUV, nursing a coffee as the final act unfolded. Celia pulled up first, Felix Thorne trailing her like a smug shadow. They strolled up the driveway looking relaxed, comfortable, even happy. She reached into her purse, slid her key into the lock. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. I watched the confusion creep across her face. Felix stepped up, tried his own copy, probably a spare she'd handed him. Useless. Celia knocked, then pounded. "Adrian, open the door. This isn't funny." I stayed still. Liam passed me the coffee. "You good?" he asked quietly. I nodded once, steady. "Let her scream." Felix chimed in, his voice sharper now. "Yo, man, don't do this. We're not here to fight." I took another slow sip. I didn't look mad. I didn't look hurt. I just looked finished. Celia's pounding turned frantic. Her voice cracked into panic. "Adrian, my card just got declined at the gas station. Felix's too." Her words broke into pleas. "Adrian, please." I set the empty cup down in the console, turned to Liam. "Let's go." The SUV eased away from the curb. I glanced back once. Celia had collapsed on the porch, shoulders shaking. Felix stood off to the side, face glowing from his phone screen, probably piecing together that the SUV was gone too. I didn't wave, didn't gloat, didn't smirk. I just watched, clear-eyed, calm. Then I faced forward. "Checkmate," I said softly. No shouting, no broken glass, no final showdown. Just quiet removal. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was reclamation. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the one holding the board. The next morning, I sat on the patio of a quiet downtown hotel, coffee in hand, watching the city move on like nothing had happened. The sun rose golden between tall buildings. People rushed by, earbuds in, cups steaming, chasing their routines. For the first time in days, I felt absolutely nothing. There was no sting, no ache, just a strange stillness, the kind that shows up once the anger burns off and only purpose remains. My phone buzzed once, then again, and again. By the time I looked, there were 10 missed calls from Celia, 5 from a number I didn't recognize, and a voicemail. I didn't bother listening. I already knew the script: confusion, excuses, maybe some manufactured concern. None of it mattered. Instead, I opened my laptop and logged into the secure client portal Liam had set up for me. Everything was already in motion. Divorce papers filed. Petition for a temporary restraining order submitted, backed by video evidence pulled straight from the security system I'd installed myself. Yes, I'd reviewed the footage. And no, she hadn't even bothered to close the blinds. The hallway camera caught everything. Her laughter, the sound of the bed moving, timestamps spelling out betrayal in black and white. It was all there. The court would see it. But honestly, I didn't need a judge to tell me what I already knew. I clicked into the next set of documents, civil suit paperwork. Over the past several months, Celia had been bleeding our joint account dry. Thousands gone. I'd seen it happening while I quietly moved assets into safer places. What made her carelessness worse, and legally damning, was that part of that money came from my VA disability checks. Protected federal funds. She either didn't realize or didn't give a damn. Either way, it gave me the green light to hit her with fraud and possibly felony misappropriation. If she returned the money, it could stay civil. If she didn't, it would turn criminal. I didn't care which road it took. Either way, she'd lose. But I wasn't finished. Another folder. Another step. I opened the email draft I'd been shaping since 3 a.m. It was addressed to the Title IX office and the Academic Integrity Board at the university. Celia worked part-time in administration there. Felix Thorne, her smug little partner, was tenured faculty. The email was short, precise, and backed by receipts. Screenshots of Celia's work calendar, showing hours mysteriously blocked off. GPS pings that put her not at work, but in Felix's office or at his faculty housing during those times. Add in receipts, gas, meals, even a short-term rental, all billed to our joint account. The implication was plain as day. A faculty member having an inappropriate relationship with a university staffer, both using school time and school resources to do it. Not just a scandal, an ethics violation. Policy territory. I zipped up the evidence file, attached it, and hit send. 2 hours later, the reply came back. Thank you for your report. This matter has been forwarded to the Office of Academic Integrity and Human Resources for immediate review. That was all I needed. I didn't have to watch the fireworks. I just had to know the fuse was lit. Later that day, Celia texted me. Please, can we just talk? Everything's gotten out of control. We didn't mean to hurt you like this. I almost laughed. They hadn't meant to hurt me? No. They just assumed I wouldn't fight back. They thought I'd crumble, stay quiet, be too broken to act. Instead, they got a man who understood patience. A man who knew that real damage didn't come from yelling. It came from precision. And Felix? He was already caught in the net. Transfers from our joint account to his Venmo. Little notes attached. Thank you, getaway weekend. Sloppy. Traceable. Rookie mistakes. I didn't need revenge. I needed truth. And truth, once it's backed up with timestamps, affidavits, and university policy violations, speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. By nightfall, the storm wasn't inside me anymore. It had moved outward, into courtrooms, inboxes, HR departments, compliance offices. And me? I just sat quietly, sipping black coffee, reading one line from the university's follow-up email over again. If confirmed, disciplinary action may include suspension or termination. That was enough. The board was moving, but the pieces weren't in their hands anymore. Sunday afternoon carried that fake suburban stillness. Hedges trimmed sharp, porch decor neatly rotated every season, mailboxes too clean to ever hold a late bill. I pulled into the Evanses' driveway in slacks and a dark button-down, carrying nothing but a slim charcoal folder under my arm. No ceremony, no show, just purpose. The house belonged to Harold and Beatrice Evans, Celia's parents. For 12 years they'd given me smiles dipped in vinegar, politeness always laced with judgment. Beatrice once told me at Thanksgiving, wine glass poised like a gavel, "You're not exactly the man we prayed for, but at least you pay the bills." The door opened before I could knock. Celia stood there, jeans, a t-shirt, looking nothing like the polished woman she tried so hard to play. Her face drained the moment she saw me. "What are you doing here?" My voice stayed calm. "I brought something for your parents." Beatrice appeared behind her daughter, sharp-eyed, smirk already forming. "Oh, look, the ghost returns." I didn't blink. "May I come in?" Celia hesitated. Beatrice tilted her head like she was amused. "It's fine. Let him talk." They led me into the living room. Harold sat in his recliner, flipping half-heartedly through a golf magazine, barely looking up. I stayed standing. 5 minutes, Celia muttered. "Less," I said. I set the folder on their glass coffee table, opened it, and slid out the first page. A spreadsheet, neat rows of numbers. $74,235 in withdrawals, every line stamped with a date and time. One in particular stood out, weekend cabin, wired straight into Felix Thorne's Venmo. I looked at Harold, not Celia. "This is what your daughter did with our savings." He laid down the next sheet of paper. This one was an email printout from the university's Office of Academic Integrity, confirming that an investigation had been opened into Celia and Felix for misconduct at work. "They weren't just sneaking around," I said evenly. "They used school property, on school hours, and your daughter's position in administration to make their affair more convenient." I slid the page across the table toward Beatrice, never breaking eye contact. "It's already been escalated to HR." Then came the third document, the one that sucked the oxygen out of the room. It was a copy of the deed to the house Celia thought she still had some claim to. I pointed straight to the notarized transfer of ownership, dated 3 weeks before she'd been locked out. "That house," I said calmly, "it's not hers anymore. I sold it legally to a private buyer. Owen Cross, my cousin. He leased it back to me short-term under a private agreement. Which means every single night Celia spent there after I changed the locks, she was trespassing." Beatrice's face twisted into a scowl. "You're bluffing." I didn't bother replying. Instead, I turned the page toward Harold. He leaned forward, his brows drawn tight, his lips pressed in a thin line as he read. Celia began to shake. Her arms folded tight across her chest, her voice barely above a whisper. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." I lifted a brow. "Good. Then you'll understand I'm also filing to recover the money that vanished, and I've documented the misuse of my VA disability benefits. That's a federal felony." Finally, I pulled out the last paper. I set it down on the table like a closing argument. A single sheet, a mortgage assistance cancellation notice. "This," I said, looking directly at Beatrice and Harold, "is what I stopped paying last week. For the past year and a half, I've been quietly covering your mortgage payments. Every month. I never asked for thanks, never even mentioned it. I was planning to surprise you by paying it off completely this December." I shrugged. But things change. The smirk drained from Beatrice's face. Harold dropped his magazine to the floor. Celia's eyes glistened with something that might have been regret, but I wasn't interested. "For 12 years, I said, my voice low and cutting sharp. I showed up. I worked. I paid the bills. I defended your daughter's reputation. I carried the weight of this family on my back. And in return, I came home from the hospital and found her with another man in my bed." I turned to Beatrice. "And you pushed her in that direction. You never thought I was enough. Well, congratulations. I'm finally living down to your expectations." I shut the folder, tucked it under my arm, and walked toward the door. Behind me, voices broke loose, Celia pleading, Beatrice sobbing, Harold shouting, but I didn't stop. I opened the door myself, stepped outside, and closed it gently behind me. It wasn't revenge. It was justice, served with proof, not with anger. Not by screaming, but by letting the facts speak. I didn't need them to like me. I only needed them to finally understand that the man they looked down on had risen above them. The silence I left behind was louder than any fight could have been. Weeks went by, and I never said another word. Not to Celia, not to her parents, not to anyone in her world. I didn't have to. The damage was already unraveling on its own, one thread at a time, tearing apart the illusion she'd built around herself. It started with the eviction notice. Celia ignored the early warnings, convincing herself my coldness was temporary, or maybe the house still somehow belonged to her. But when 2 sheriff's deputies showed up in uniform, stapled the order to the front door, and gave her 24 hours to get out, reality hit her like a slap. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains as she cried, begged, and finally packed her things in silence. Felix Thorne didn't come to help. He had his own firestorm to put out. The university moved quicker than anyone expected. The Title IX report I filed, with timestamps, receipts, and Celia's calendar entries, triggered a full investigation. The evidence was more than enough. Felix was suspended immediately. Within days, his tenure was stripped. The board issued a public statement citing gross violations of academic ethics. His pension, once locked in for retirement, was gone. When the screenshots surfaced, photos of Celia and Felix together during work hours, some even sent from university servers, the faculty message boards lit up with shock and disgust. But the worst hit didn't come from the university. It came from home, from Felix's wife, Natalie. She hadn't really known. Not until a manila envelope showed up in her mailbox, anonymously sent. Inside were beach selfies, receipts, and one cruel message straight from Celia's phone. "He makes me feel alive again." Natalie filed for divorce the following week. As for Celia, her downfall picked up speed. Beatrice and Harold stopped answering her calls. The embarrassment from my visit still clung to them like smoke. Beatrice quit her country club lunches. Harold stopped showing up at golf. Whispers followed them everywhere. Mortgage collectors, once held at bay by my quiet payments, now called daily. Celia bounced around for a while, crashing with a former co-worker before settling into a one-bedroom apartment near a strip mall. Then came the job, the only one she could land, a retail gig at HomeGoods. The same kind of job she once mocked. "That's what people do when they have no ambition," she'd posted online once. Now she wore the apron, scanned barcodes, and forced a smile through clenched teeth. Still, she tried to spin the story. On social media, she cast herself as the victim. She shared cryptic quotes about emotional abuse and gaslighting, posted tear-stained selfies, wrote captions about healing. She claimed I had cut her off without compassion, used my influence to ruin her life. People, some friends, some strangers, sent comments, heart emojis, encouragement. For a moment, she almost pulled it off. Until I replied, not as myself. I made a burner account. One comment. One question. Beneath one of her melodramatic posts, I wrote, "Didn't you mock your disabled husband while he was in the hospital, while sleeping with your affair partner in his bed? Curious if that's in your next post too." The comment caught fire. Dozens of likes, shares, then more. And people started asking questions. Friends started dropping off one by one. Some unfollowed quietly. Others erased her from their lives entirely. The picture Celia had spent years painting, that glossy, tragic, misunderstood version of herself, crumbled under the weight of truth she couldn't run from. I never said another word. Didn't need to. I just watched from a distance as it all came apart. No gloating, no grand speeches. No phone calls, no statements, no dramatic displays of payback. Only silence. Sharp, steady, deliberate silence. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was finished. And Celia? For the first time in her life, she was truly alone. Not the kind of lonely you feel after an argument, but the deeper kind. The one that sets in when you've burned every bridge, run every excuse dry, and realize you're standing alone in the ruins of what you built with your own hands. I didn't forgive her, and I never said I would. But I also didn't destroy her. She managed that part all by herself. A year later, I woke up to the sound of water lapping gently against the dock outside my cabin. The air was crisp, the sky brushed with soft gold and pale blue. Birds sang in the trees, the kind of music you only hear in places untouched by noise and chaos. The cabin wasn't fancy. 2 small bedrooms, a little kitchen, a fireplace that kept the cold at bay in winter. But it was mine. Tucked near the VA hospital, right on the edge of a quiet lake, it had everything I needed and nothing I didn't. Some mornings I went fishing, not because I cared if I caught anything, but because wading into that still water did something for my soul. Some afternoons I volunteered. Sometimes I'd help another vet fill out paperwork or figure out housing. Other times I just sat and listened while they got the heavy stuff off their chest. I knew that weight. Maybe not the exact kind from war, but the kind that comes when betrayal cuts deeper than any wound. With the help of my friend Liam Reed, I'd started a nonprofit 6 months earlier. It wasn't loud or flashy, but it worked. We helped military families get legal aid, emergency housing, and funds when the bottom dropped out. The money came partly from donations, partly from my own pocket, but mostly from one dependable deposit, $9.843. Same amount, same day every month. Court-ordered restitution. Celia Evans's way of paying back the money she drained from our account, including the VA benefits she never should have touched. I never spent a dime of it personally. Every cent went straight into the nonprofit. Not out of spite, out of purpose. I'd come to believe that if something was broken, the best thing you could do was turn it into something useful. People sometimes asked if I missed her. If in the quiet moments, I thought about what could have been. My answer was always the same. I don't miss her. I miss who I thought she was. I hadn't seen Celia since that day in her parents' living room. I didn't know where she was now. The payments still came, but her voice, her chaos, her shadow, none of it reached me anymore. She tried once, through her lawyer, to get in touch. Liam handled it. I never replied. There was nothing left to say. And the strangest thing? I didn't hate her. For a long time, I thought I'd carry rage like a stone in my chest, replaying that betrayal until the end of my days. But standing on the dock one misty morning, I realized something important. Hatred is a chain. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, isn't about giving someone else peace. It's about cutting yourself free. I didn't forgive Celia in the sense of excusing her or softening what she did. I just released her. I let her go, not as an act of kindness, but as a final act of closing the door. There was no reunion coming. No second chance. Some people ruin their shot forever, and the strongest response is to keep walking. Inside the cabin, a report from the nonprofit lay on my dining table. 5 families helped this quarter. One vet reunited with his kids after a brutal custody fight. Another finally got emergency shelter after losing his home. I read through the names slowly, proud. They didn't know the story behind the funding. They didn't need to. That wasn't the point. Later that day, I walked the gravel trail out back and stopped at a wooden bench that faced the lake. The breeze was light, my heartbeat steady. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't looking backward. People think silence means weakness. They mistake peace for surrender. But I knew better. I had been the quietest man in the room, and I'd won. Not through shouting, not through fists, but through patience, strategy, and truth. This was never revenge. This was closure. And closure, when it's earned, is the loudest silence there is. Some betrayals don't need confrontation. They deserve consequences. My story proves that strength doesn't always come with noise, and dignity isn't something anyone can strip from you unless you let them. In silence, I rebuilt my life. With strategy, I protected my peace. And by walking away without looking back, I learned something worth passing on. Healing doesn't start when they apologize. It starts the moment we stop waiting for them to. Closure isn't about revenge. It's about choosing yourself and doing it without asking for permission. So, if you've ever been broken, remember this. You don't have to burn their house down. You just have to stop letting them live in yours. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. To hear the next story, click on the box to the left. Thanks for watching.